and we'll have a few minutes of Q&A. We've got a number of questions that are coming in, and if you have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat function, and we'll make this as useful to everybody as possible. I'm going to start with a question directed to us, to the Pint State team, and that is a very simple question, which is, what has been the impact of COVID on the project? There's two sides to this project, obviously. One is the actual construction of phase 2. And I'm gonna let Alex translate in between. So I'll make a few points and then I'll turn it over to Alex. There are two sides to it. One is the actual construction of phase 2. And then one is the operations of the ongoing plant. So again, what makes this a unique situation is that it is the expansion of a plant that is already up and running. Alex?
Да, один из вопросов, который к нам поступил, был насчет ковида, и мы бы хотели объяснить, что в Big River Steel есть два процесса, которые идут одновременно. Один — это уже операционная прибыль и операционный бизнес, который существует, приносит прибыль, а второе — это строительство и расширение уже существующего проекта.
And so, on the, one of the great advantages, lucky advantages for Big River is that Big River is located in a very rural area and has really not been affected by COVID. So both the construction of phase 2 is on schedule, in fact, slightly ahead of schedule, about 76% complete as of last month. And also on the operational side, there have been no slowdowns. There's been no work stoppage. There have been no COVID cases at the plant. And so the plant is able to continue to operate on a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week schedule.
Ну да, как Себастьян упомянул, Big River Steel находится в сельской зоне занятости, поэтому COVID практически не затронул ни операционную, ни строительную часть компании. И на данном этапе строительство завершено на 76%. И практически все происходит по плану, по намеченному плану, никаких отклонений не было.
And then the other fortunate factor is that this is an industry that has not been very negatively impacted. Obviously, there are lots of other industries that are suffering during COVID, anything that is travel related, anything that is hospitality related, office construction is having a tough time. Luxury real estate is having a tough time. Big River makes high-grade steel. Demand continues to be very strong for high-grade steel. The auto industry continues to do well, and other industries that need high-grade steel continue to make investments. So the demand for the product has only experienced a very small slowdown, basically still going very strong.
Да, другие также индустрии были затронуты, но не Big River Steel, потому что это является индустрией сталелитейной. И мы можем видеть, что другие индустрии, такие как отели, разные люксовые резорты, они сейчас переживают достаточно сложный период. Но Big River Steel продолжает также производить сталь, потому что сталь также в деманде, и очень много людей хотят ее купить, поэтому COVID практически не затронул индустрию как сталелитейную.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. So moving on to a question for Mike and Dan. Some of this you guys covered, but perhaps you can elaborate a little bit more. The question goes as follows. I have read that H-1B visa category has new restrictions. Can you explain?
Yeah. Well, Mike, do you want to take this one? Because then you could do the English and the Russian. Sebastian, do you hear me?
I hear you fine.
All right, I'll go ahead with the
Sure, I can do it. I keep on putting myself on mute. I'm gonna just stop the mute. So sorry about that. So yeah, sure, I'm happy to do it, Dan. So some of the things that we've talked about are the fact that just the non-immigrant visa climate in the U.S. is becoming more difficult, and that's evidenced in the government's kind of changes in the EB-1 space recently. So just last week, they announced with about 2 weeks notice that the prevailing wage categories were going up quite significantly. And then separately, they announced that they were going to propose a regulation that would restrict the way the H-1B visa is adjudicated and how, quote unquote, a specialty occupation is determined, right? And so this is consistent with what we have seen from the administration, which is that they have essentially, kind of made it more difficult for employers to sponsor people. And one of the benefits of the EB-5 program, which is really a very significant benefit, is that it is not employer-based. It is something that the investor gets to control. So let me switch to Russia now. Вопрос был о изменении в сфере миграционной визы H-1B. И что мы видим за последние пару лет, это что правительство миграционный процесс для работодателей делает сложнее и сложнее. У них больше запросов, они правила постоянно меняют. И в сфере H-1B они новое законодательство, которое, во-первых, делает те зарплаты, которые работодатель должен платить, намного выше, и во-вторых, сделает, чтобы миграционная служба рассматривала эти петиции чуть-чуть по-другому, и это все сделает этот процесс сложнее и, наверное, еще дольше, чем он сейчас. Одно, самое лучшее преимущество EB-5, и что EB-5 не зависит от работодателя. EB-5 – это процесс, который контролирует инвестор, и он решает, когда и что, и прочее. И почти что все другие миграционные процессы, или с точки зрения миграционной визы, или с точки зрения миграции навсегда в США, зависят от работодателя.
Great, thanks, Mike. Next question is to Pine State. Not unexpectedly, the question is, please explain impact of expedite. So let's talk a little bit about this expedite. Basically, Pine State applied for expedited adjudication of its exemplar for Big River Steel Phase 2. And on what's called national security interest grounds. In other words, making the argument that that the U.S. government has repeatedly said that steel, and in particular high-grade steel production, is of national importance. And as a result, we requested that the exemplar adjudication would be expedited. Alex?
Да, Big River Steel, она подала заявление на ускоренную обработку в связи с тем, что было заявлено, что это национальный интерес, так как сталь является одним из стратегических элементов, и в связи с этим Big River Steel имеет все шансы на ускоренный процесс обработки этой петиции в связи с тем, что это является национальным интересом.
And this application came with a large amount of evidence, support letters from a wide range of officials, both at the state level and the federal level, basically supporting this argument that it is of national importance to expedite the Big River Steel Phase 2 exemplar.
Заявление было подано с подтверждением от разных лиц, в том числе официальных лиц, в том числе губернатора области, различных официальных лиц, кто непосредственно принимает участие и связан с этим проектом, и поэтому имеет все шансы и достаточно высокие шансы, что этот проект, что это заявление было одобрено.
Ultimately, the USCIS agreed and approved this request. And so now the Phase 2 exemplar is being adjudicated on an expedited basis.
Да, и этот процесс был одобрен, как и ожидалось, и сейчас мы имеем такую возможность, как ускоренный процесс оформления фазы 2, который сейчас как раз происходит в Big River Steel.
It's worth mentioning that this is very rare. There have been hundreds of EB-5 projects, and there have been very, very few so-called expedited projects.
Да, также стоит отметить, что очень много проектов подавалось на эту ускоренную обработку, но очень немногим удалось пройти весь путь, и Big River Steel один из немногих, можно сказать.
I would caution, to be very clear, that the expedited adjudication applies specifically to the exemplar of the project. It is not a blanket expedite. It does not guarantee that every investor's application will be expedited.
Также стоит отметить, что нет гарантии, что каждый инвестор, который будет подаваться через Big River Steel и через региональный центр, будет иметь возможность ускоренной обработки. То есть это будет процесс рассмотрения на индивидуальном случае. Каждый случай будет индивидуально рассматриваться.
However, the USCIS, in its approval for this expedite request, points out that every investor going forward has the right to also ask for similar expedited adjudication. And when an investor that invests in the phase 2 files their petition, we will provide this package of evidence and support letters for your attorney to integrate into your petition, so that you can then make on an individual basis the same request for expedited adjudication.
Да, и так как Big River Steel имеет сейчас пакет документов уже подтвержденный от USCIS, в то время, когда вы будете подаваться через Big River Steel и региональный центр, Big River Steel даст вам весь пакет необходимых документов, и ваш лоер подаст на ускоренный процесс, пользуясь этими документами. Но это, опять же, на индивидуальном рассмотрении, на индивидуальном бейсисе от случая к случаю.
If you have any further questions about this, obviously we're happy to discuss, and you can also discuss with your attorneys who can give you a little bit more context on how this really works.
Okay.
Next question. We have a question for Dan and Mike. Again, I think you touched on this, but perhaps you can elaborate a little bit. The question is, with green card, do I have to live in same state? I guess meaning the same state as the project. How many days per year I have to spend in the US? How long until I can get citizenship?
I'll take the English if that's okay. So in order of the questions, no. So that's one of the valuable aspects and nice things about EB-5 is that you can live wherever you'd like in the 50 states. So unrestricted, totally fine. I guess beyond the 50 states, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, the whole thing is part of U.S. territories. So that's good. You could live in Arkansas if you wish. You do not have to. You could live in New York City. You could live wherever you would like. How much time do you have to spend in the United States? So that's a good one. I would say let's start with the safe answer of easy answer, traditional answer, the majority of your time, right? So if majority of your time is in the United States, easy peasy, done. If it's not, then we should probably just talk a little bit. So if you're in a situation where you're principally outside, but popping in every few months, so every 2-3 months, you're here for a couple of weeks, that's also satisfactory. You should not have any problems with your status. You're maintaining your green card status. If you're going to be out for significant chunks, like time approaching 6 months at a time, right, or perhaps even longer than that, we can take steps to file something to protect your status. That would protect your green card status. Because again, the expectation is that the U.S. is your home during that period. For citizenship, the clock starts when you get the conditional card. Now, if you're doing something with the time where you're principally out, that could also affect eligibility for citizenship because you do have to hit certain day counts. But generally, the easy, simple answer, and then your facts we could talk about one-on-one perhaps, would be 5 years from when you get the conditional green card.
Okay. So вопрос был, во-первых, сколько времени нужно проводить в США, когда вы получаете эту грин-карту, и во-вторых, когда можно подать на гражданство. И также нужно же жить в том же штате, где находится региональный центр и проект. Во-первых, не нужно жить в том штате, где находится региональный центр и этот проект. Во-вторых, как бы самый как бы легкий как бы ответ, когда у вас грин-карта, у вас должно быть намерение как бы жить в США, и вы должны, по идее, проводить как бы большинство вашего времени в США. Но если вы, скажем, приезжаете там каждые пару месяцев, проводите здесь какое-то время, и потом уезжаете, обычно это достаточно сохранить эту грин-карту. Если вы проводите больше, чем 6 месяцев за границей, мы можем подать на документ, который доказывает это намерение и сохраняет эту грин-карту. И также мы как бы очень часто с клиентами работаем, чтобы найти как бы для них самый лучший путь. Okay? Так что как бы короткий ответ — это что даже если у вас грин-карта, вы можете проводить какое-то время, даже довольно долгие сроки за границей. Просто нужно с этим обходиться очень осторожно. Sebastian, you're on mute now.
You're right. Absolutely.
I've done that several times, so I know.
Takes one to know one. So I have a question to Pine State and Big River, and I guess Fragomen can add to this if you want. It basically says, what if the project that I choose goes bankrupt? Do I lose my money and do I lose my green card? So first of all, it's obviously very important to choose a project that has good economics and a good viability underlying fundamentals. If a project that you choose goes bankrupt, it is not necessarily impacting your green card process. So these processes are side by side. It is technically possible that you choose a project that creates more than enough jobs such that once you get your green card, removal of conditions is not a problem. And then the project still goes bankrupt, and so perhaps getting your money back or getting all of your money back becomes a challenge. So you could technically end up with a green card, but not with all of your money back.
Да, вопрос насчет банкротства проекта, что случится с деньгами и вообще какая ситуация будет происходить, если обанкротится проект, в который инвестор инвестирует свои деньги. И прежде всего важно выбрать проект, который будет предоставлять достаточное количество рабочих мест, который будет финансово стабильный. Но также существует риск, что если проект обанкротится, и вы, например, удовлетворили требования, создали рабочие места и получили свою грин-карту, но затем проект обанкротился, и вам теперь нужно получить свои средства из проекта. И это может быть достаточно проблематичным, поэтому нужно выбирать достаточно стабильный проект.
To be clear, it could also work the other way. So technically, you could choose a project that is very financially successful, but for whatever reason, they overestimated the number of jobs. And so at the end, they didn't create enough jobs for you. And so you don't get to keep your green card, but you do get your money back. That is also technically possible.
Да, существует вторая ситуация, что, например, проект очень успешен финансово, но они, например, переоценили свои возможности создания рабочих мест, и вы, например, вернете свои деньги через 5 лет или через какой срок там получится, и, например, вы не сможете получить грин-карту. То есть здесь достаточно нужно держать баланс, найти проект, который и создаст рабочие места, и вернет вам деньги в конце.
Again, obviously, what you want is both. You obviously want to get your green card and you want to get your money back. Speaking specifically to Big River Steel, the benefit here is that all the jobs have already been created, and that's already been verified independently by the independent economists Baker Tilly. That verification letter already exists. So already today, you can check that box. You know that the sufficient jobs are there, and so you get to keep your green card based on the jobs. And on the financial side, again, you have an advantage that you're investing in a project that is already profitable, that continues to churn out cash flow, that is very well capitalized, and that has an owner group that is extremely sophisticated who sit behind you.
Да, насчет, если мы рассматриваем проект Big River Steel, то что вы, например, попадете в один из этих критериев, и рабочие места не будут созданы, и вы не получите грин-карту на основании этого. И также второй момент, то, что уже производится прибыль этим проектом, это один из немногих или, может, достаточно уникальный проект, который уже производит прибыль. Многие проекты хотят, чтобы вы инвестировали в будущее, в ожидание будущих прибылей. А этот проект уже производит прибыль 24/7 и также имеет инвесторов, которые вложили свой капитал в этот проект, таких как Berkshire Hathaway и другие.
Okay, so we have a final question here for the Fragomen team. I think is from one of our African continent viewers. They're asking about, are there any African countries that are currently on the restricted list? And I guess you can expand that and perhaps address if any Russian or the Eastern European countries are on that list as well.
Yeah, well, so the good news is when we say restricted list, I guess two parts to that question, perhaps. One is, I'm open, right? I'm not on mute. Yeah. One is the backlogs, right? And the answer there is no, right? I don't know that that's what you mean by restricted, but it's worth noting that the backlog countries, China, India, Vietnam, African continent, not. And then separate from that is the question of, I think, travel ban related. So are you barred by virtue of any of the specific COVID or other Trump sort of measures, African continent wise? The answer there similarly is no with respect to the COVID bans, no with respect to anything specific for the HLJ ban, as we call it, from June 24th. So largely no. There is some restriction with respect to countries that the government has perceived as terror related, but again, no for the vast majority of the continent. So good answers to all of that stuff, which are no, and that's consistent with, I think, most of the audience on this call, which are outside of country of birth, India, China, Vietnam. As far as restricted countries beyond that, for COVID, remember it's Europe, but just the Schengen area, UK, Ireland, and then Iran, China, Brazil. And those are all temporary, but they are in place currently.
You want me to do that in Russian? Because there's a viewer from Africa. I wasn't sure if it was appropriate.
Probably not necessary unless there are any former Soviet states that are affected in any of this.
No, I'll just say in Russian that visas are open. So, как бы я не буду повторять вопрос, но как бы те, которые смотрят с России, бывшего Советского Союза, как бы сейчас EB-5 визы открыты, все ограничения по въезду в США, они как бы они открыты, и как бы те люди, которые держат русское гражданство, представители России, бывшего Советского Союза, они могут продолжать как бы эмигрировать и ездить в США. Sorry, shortened, slightly different version.
All right, thank you so much, Mike. That's all the questions we have for now. I encourage you all to reach out to either the Pine State team or the Fragomen team if you have further questions, if anything comes up after you get off the webinar. This webinar was recorded, so if you want to listen to any parts of it again, feel free to reach out, and it will be posted both on Facebook and elsewhere, so you can watch it again. And I thank the Fragomen team very much for adding their knowledge. Again, as we've said in the beginning and in the middle, I'll end with the fact that to remind everybody, Fragomen is entirely independent from Pine State. We find Fragomen to be one of the absolutely best teams doing this, and so they have done probably 50 plus cases into the first and second phase of Big River. They do a great job. They know a lot. They have expertise across the immigration spectrum. But again, they are not related to us. They don't get paid by us. We don't get paid by them. So they would be your lawyers. So feel free to reach out to them entirely independently. And on the Pine State side, thank you to Alexander. Thank you to the rest of our team. We are standing by to talk to you. We have a full document team, a full loan administration team. So if anyone has any questions and wants to dig a little bit deeper, we would love to help you. And if you have questions about the expedite or about the process, please let us know. And with that, I thank everybody and appreciate your time and wish you a nice day.
Thanks,
Nice day, everyone.
Всего хорошего.
everyone.